Hi, I'm Jason.
And I'm Natalie.
Welcome to Heritage Homestead. I grew up in a small town, a rural town. We had about 600 people in my town. And right after high school, I decided that I needed to go to college. And that was the decision that I made, and it was a path that was set ahead of me. I came home about every other weekend, and I just knew that there was something in my life that was missing, and there was something that was calling me back to this area. And so I really enjoy the rural life, and I probably couldn't have communicated that at the time, nor did I know it, but looking back at it, there's something about living in rural communities.
My story is a little bit different. I grew up on my grandparents' farm, and actually both sides of my grandparents lived very close to each other. So I got a wonderful opportunity to be at both farms all the time, and I'm very grateful for that experience. I found it fascinating to watch my grandma scrape the cream off the milk when it literally came fresh from the barn, and I would watch her take that dipper and she would just scrape and scrape, and I thought, what is she doing? And then she would say, well, this turns into butter, and I'm like, no way, that can do that. That's where we get butter. And so one thing led to another of my experiences, and it just really set me on a path of, I want to know these things. I want to know heritage skills. I want to know things of the past. I want to understand how these people lived and survived without water and electricity, and they had to go fetch their water and, start their own fires, and they don't have the modern conveniences that we are so privileged today to live with. And so I don't know if fascinated is the right word, but I was very motivated and very driven to learn this type of lifestyle.
I never really felt like it was a part of my lifestyle, but I was exposed to it, and I think that's the part of me growing up in a rural community. We would take apples to get pressed for cider. My dad would plant a garden, like I said, every year in the rows, and he would talk to me about how some seeds would grow better in certain areas of the garden. We had lots of opportunities to go cut wood and to be out in the woods just by the simple fact that, well, my dad was a science teacher, and you mentioned cream. I remember my dad, it was more of a science experiment. It wasn't something that I had to rely on or how to live on, because we got our milk at the store. We got our produce at the store, most of it.
I I wasn't fully in charge of any manual labor. It was just probably more fun if my grandfather said, you know, go hose out the barn, or go sweep this, or, you know, shovel in the silage for the cows. He milked, and I did help quite a bit with that, and I really loved it. And I'm very grateful for those experiences, because it just gave me a love for family farming, really, and just a really simple, slower paced life.
I think that this one is almost ready. Okay.
Wow. There it comes.
I loved the river. I loved just growing up. We would go caving, just being outdoors, camping in tents. I spent most of my time outside, and I thought I was doing the right thing when I moved off to the city and went to college. I thought I was doing everything I was supposed to, and what I was doing was right.
Some of the funnest things I remember is going out in the woods, and he would decide, you know, what tree that he wanted planted in maybe the yard or something, and we would go find it in the woods, and we would dig it up. And he would do that early fall, and so he would want to get it in the ground before the first freeze, but make sure there was a good few weeks there so the roots could establish. And so none of those things were actually told to me. It was just conversations that I was listening to, and I really was fascinated. Like, this is really cool information, and I really want to absorb all of this so I could use it for maybe my future.
Mama, I found the biggest peach.
Some of my favorite neighbors were in their 60s and 70s, and they had cellars, and they grew up canning and probably fermenting too. I'm not really sure, because we didn't have those conversations. But I would want to walk down there, and I would want to see what it would look like, and I would imagine all of these older people who are now passed away canning and working all summer long to preserve their food just to store it away underground. And I thought, what was that life like? I did not experience that as a kid. So looking back, I really just enjoyed simple things like sunsets, and I would go walking in the field and just watch the cows eat grass. And that might sound really ridiculous, but I think it was just the non-stress. It was probably a stress reliever of some sort, but it was quiet, and nature just really spoke to my soul. It was just something that I really enjoyed, just everything simple, to sunsets, to the cattle. I'd walk by the chicken coop, and they were doing their thing, and it was kind of like all of these things were in working order, and it just made sense to me. And because of all those experiences that I had with country living and just growing up on a farm, it set a fire within me to learn more about this lifestyle, and I was definitely positive that I was going to marry a rancher one day. And he laughs at that, but I'm being totally serious when I say that. I just really didn't want to do anything else but be a wife and a mom and a farmer's wife, really. So I don't know if that's really what we are, but this is the path we're on.
So I had all this knowledge from just growing up in the rural community, from cutting wood to going into the woods and finding mushrooms, and just a huge skill set that I had no idea that was even a part of what I was wanting to do, whereas Natalie wanted to do these things. I don't think that at the time, that time in my life, I knew that I wanted to do those things. I was trying to do what I thought other people were wanting me to do by following that career path of going to college. And when I met Natalie, it was like everything just kind of started to fall to place. I felt like I was able to be a little bit more congruent with who I was from a young age, and I saw that she had these desires to live on the farm and to have a rancher husband. And I realized that I had a lot of skills that I had no idea were actually skills. And it wasn't that big of a stretch for me whenever we started to say, hey, let's get a little garden going. Well, I knew how to start a garden just because I had seen it. I had not been taught necessarily those things either, but I just realized that that was something that I could do relatively easy.
So these conversations with Jason were really easy because we had the same vision, and we really found out quickly that we could marry those two together. We wrote down goals and really made a plan to conquer those goals, one after the other after the other. And so we did that one at a time, and we did those things. And I started to see some progression in moving forward in the areas that were really important to us.
People, and I started to see all these behavioral problems. I started to see people that had lots of stress in their life, lots of addictions in their life, childhood behaviors that were getting highly medicated by doctors, and that was the primary method to treat these children. And there was something in my mind that just didn't set well, and trying to put the two of these things together, I saw that their behaviors were really reflective of the culture that we were living
in. As he was talking about medication, it almost lit a new fire within me, because I had an advocate to talk about, why am I still on this medication? You know, so my whole childhood I was sick. Some of my grandmother's earliest memories of me, she would talk about taking me to ER as I was just a few weeks old the first time she did this. I couldn't breathe, and so they never really could figure out. I'm fairly positive I was an infant when they diagnosed me with asthma. And my chronic sickness actually just progressed. It never got better. It never even stayed stagnant. It just really progressed and got worse. And no one really had answers other than giving me just the common drugs for opening airways and breathing. And eventually I would learn to never leave my medication behind. It always came with me. Because even when I would run across the yard, I would lock up and not be able to breathe. And sometimes I would not go to school for, 4 or 5 days in a row because I was that sick. And so when you're that sick and you can't breathe, you don't eat. And so I wasn't eating well. I was just on too much medication and not enough nutrition to get better. I was determined to find a permanent solution. I just didn't know where to look. And more of my motivation came from when I had one of my babies. Immediately I saw the same symptoms that I had growing up, and it did worry me and it did scare me. And so we talked about all of this, and I thought we need to make a plan on how to move forward in the area of not being dependent on modern day medicine. And I didn't want to hand my brain over to the medical system and not ask questions. So I was motivated, not only for my health, but for that child's health, to ask a lot of questions and get some answers.
So the real start of our homesteading journey was motivated by health. So we started small.
So from our first tiny little house on a half-acre lot to 14 years of being here on this piece of land, we have put those skills to use. And in those 14 short years, we have expanded the house to accommodate our growing family. We have created more space in the kitchen to make it more efficient for hospitality and preserving and cooking. And we've built several infrastructures on our property that makes this place a lot more functional for this lifestyle. We got our first colony of bees that first year. We planted gardens, we did berry patches, which is some of my favorite places to go. Lots of fruit trees that we call our little orchard, and we fenced in the pasture. I think that second year we lived here, and that just got really exciting because as you see things grow and get set up on your property, you just, I don't know, my vision just keeps growing. So we raised chickens and cows, and as the kids kept coming, we got our first dog. It was so cute. So I don't know, we just kept building and building upon all of the things that we've learned and made mistakes on and learned not to do and learned what to do. It's just been really a fun and rewarding journey.
So as we started adding these different elements to our property, kind of starting to expand, I think the thing that surprised me the most was the new emphasis and the new value that I was starting to place on family. And I started to see our home as the primary place where our children learn character skills and character training. And they started to develop a work ethic. And you can read about that, you can talk to your kids about that, but unless you have an opportunity for them to practice those, they really don't set in. And so we found that was probably been the most rewarding thing about what we've been able to do here. And so really that's the purpose of what we're trying to accomplish here. We are on a journey. And we have just been so joyful in our hearts about some of the things that we've been able to see with our family. And we're not perfect parents, and we're definitely not perfect farmers, but we would like to share our journey with you. And that's really kind of the purpose of what we're doing here, is that we would like to help you get started and help you to be encouraged. I know that for us, that learning curve can be very discouraging. It can be a time where you think, well, what's the point of this? Why are we even doing this?
Or you made a bad purchase and you lost money at something and you're like, what are we doing, or wasting our time and resources? And so we really want to just be that time in your life where we can, maybe a place where you can go to get encouragement, to see that keep pushing through it. Even if you make mistakes, it's worth it in the end, because what you're focusing on might not be what really is having the most impact. Because you're teaching adversity, you're teaching perseverance, you're teaching all of these character traits, and some of them come through negative experiences and opportunities. Just like we grew up with some of the skills that we had no idea were going to be as important as they are to us today, we want to preserve that for our children and future generations. And we want to do all that we can to help encourage you to lay down a heritage for your family. You may be on a little property like we started out on and would like to start creating a space for a garden. My encouragement to you is to start with something small. Pot some herbs. Go to your local grower and grab some apples and make applesauce with your children. Just preserve what you can. That little cliche, bloom where we're planted, is really true. If we can have the perspective of this life being a lifelong journey and being content where we are at today, we can live such a joyous life. None of us reach the goal easily, and it takes a lot of time to learn new things and to build upon what we know and what we have. Only then can we really appreciate the efforts gone into building a life worth living. So wherever you find yourself planted, start there.